Well, hello, you perfectly lovely little people. My name is Sarah, and this evening I'm going to read you a story called Peter, Wendy, and a Thimble. I hope you like it. Now, it was all dark and quiet in the little darling's room, but only for a moment. For a bright light flew in at the window, the top of which was open, and rushed to and fro like a ball of quicksilver. If this light had ever stood still, it would have been seen for what it was, a lovely little girl fairy called Tinker Bell. She was darting all around the room hunting for Peter's shadow. But it had been folded up in a drawer by Wendy's mum. She found it yesterday and had no idea what it was. She was too busy searching in pockets and behind pictures, and she even peered into a jug. It was empty, and she dropped into it to see what it was like. It was the first time she'd ever been in a jug in her life, and she did enjoy it. So her light was hidden when Peter himself came in at the window. He guessed where she was. "Oh, Tink, do come out of that jug," he called softly, "and tell me, have you found where they put my shadow?" She answered him in a voice like a tiny bell, with a silvery tinkle, which is the fairy language. It was the only way that she could speak, and that's why she was named Tinker Bell. Peter knew what she meant, although nobody else could have understood. She said that his shadow was somewhere in the big box. She meant the chest of drawers. It was too big for her to open. Peter had his shadow out in a second, and he was so excited at getting it back that he shut up Tinker Bell in the drawer and he never noticed. The bother was, his shadow wouldn't join on to him again. It had forgotten that it belonged to him. He tried to stick it on with some soap. That was no good. The shadow just fell off and lay on the floor. Peter was so disappointed about it that he sat on the floor beside it, blubbing loudly. Wendy was wakened by the sound of sobs, and she sat up in bed to listen. She'd seen Peter before in dreams, so she was not a bit surprised to see him now. She asked him quite politely, "Boy, what are you crying for?" Peter got up and they bowed to each other most beautifully. He wanted to know what her name was, and she told him. It was a sweet name. "Wendy, Moira, Angela, Darling. What's yours?" she asked. He answered, "Peter Pan." "And where do you live?" she went on. Peter answered, "Second turn to the right and then straight on until morning." She looked at Peter and saw how prettily he was dressed, in leaves sewn together. Some of the leaves, however, were coming undone. She was just going to offer to fix them for him when he began to explain why he was crying. It was because he couldn't get his shadow to stick on. So Wendy fetched her needle and cotton and thimble and sewed the shadow on to Peter's foot. She hurt him as little as she could possibly help. And she sat beside Peter on the side of the bed and said, "And if you like, I will give you a kiss." Peter held out his hand. "Surely you know what a kiss is," said Wendy. "Well, I shall know when you give it to me," Peter answered. Wendy didn't want to hurt his feelings, so she took off a thimble and gave it to him. It was a nice little silver one. Peter liked Thimble so much that he offered to give Wendy a kiss. She turned her face towards him, and he gave her an acorn button off his coat. It was not the sort of kiss that she cared about, but she said she would always wear it on a chain around her neck. After all, she couldn't expect everyone to know as much about kisses as Mrs. Darling did. Especially Peter, who Wendy soon found out had no mother. "No mother?" Wendy was shocked. "Don't have a mother." "How old are you?" Wendy asked him. "Don't know," said Peter. "I ran away the day I was born." "Ooh," explained Wendy, "what a silly thing to do." "I don't want to be a grown-up. I won't be a grown-up. I want to stay a little boy forever and ever and ever," said Peter. "Oh," cried Wendy again, "but how can you do that?" Peter explained that he had flown right away to Kensington Gardens on the day he was born and had lived a long time amongst the fairies. And they had told him lots of things. "So I'm now very wise," he ended. But that was really only his conceitedness. "Yes, Wendy, I believe I am so wise and so clever. I shall never grow up at all if I don't choose." Wendy did not feel so sure about the wiseness and the cleverness as Peter did, but she loved him ever so much already. And when he said that he had lived with the fairies, she was surprised. "What?" she said. "Do you really know some fairies?" "Lots and lots," said Peter. "How splendid," said Wendy. "Well, yes, perhaps," said Peter, "but they are rather bother. You know, they get in one's way." Wendy asked him so many questions that he could hardly answer her fast enough. She wanted to know, who were the fairies really and truly, and where did they come from, and where do they live on, and where would one be likely to find any of them, and would they let them speak to me? Well, it's like this," said Peter. "For the first baby that ever was, when they laughed for the first time that ever was—" "What was the baby's name?" asked Wendy. "Don't interrupt, I don't know. Anyway, its laugh broke into 1,000 tiny pieces, and they all went skipping about and turned into fairies." "Were you there?" said Wendy. "Don't interrupt. No, I wasn't. But there are only a few fairies now because children don't believe in them. They can't live unless they're believed in, and every time a child says, 'I don't believe there is such a thing as fairies,' then another fairy falls down dead." "Oh dear," said Wendy. "How very sad." "Oh, goodness me," said Peter suddenly. "I wonder where Tink, where are you?" To tell the truth, he had quite forgotten her. "I can't think where she's gone to," he said uneasily. He got up and he began to hunt about. "Oh, Peter," cried Wendy, "surely there isn't a fairy in this room?" "She was here just now, but she's keeping very quiet," replied Peter. "Listen, Wendy, listen hard. Do you hear anything?" "I hear a sound like a tinkle of tiny bells," said Wendy. "It seems to come from the chest of drawers." "That's Tink," said Peter. "That's the fairy language. Oh, Wendy, I do believe I've shut her up in the drawer." He gurgled with laughter. "Oh, the poor little thing." "You must let her out at once," cried Wendy. He opened the drawer where Tinker Bell was, and Tinker Bell flew out. "You big silly!" she screamed at Peter, and she darted all around the nursery, shrieking with rage. Peter said he was very sorry, but how could he know that she was in the drawer? "Oh, Peter, if only she would stop still a minute. I can't see her properly." "Yeah, fairies are like that," said Peter. "They hardly ever stand still." But just then, Tink settled for a moment on the top of the cuckoo clock and glared at Wendy. Tink looked quite ugly with the temper she was in, but Wendy exclaimed, "Oh, how lovely." "Where do you live now, Peter? Are you still in Kensington Gardens?" "Sometimes," he said, "but mostly I live in the Neverland along with the Lost Boys." "Are they fairies?" "No, they're children who've fallen out of their prams when their nurses aren't watching. Then the fairies pick them up and take care of them for 7 days to see if anybody comes for them. If not, they're sent away to Neverland, and I am their captain." "But why are they all boys?" "Because girls are too clever to fall out of their prams." This remark pleased Wendy so much she said, "You can give me a kiss." "I thought you'd want it back," said Peter rather crossly, and he held out the thimble. "Oh dear, I don't mean that," she said, and she thought, "He calls a thimble a kiss. I'd better call a kiss a thimble. I meant a thimble." She told him like this. She kissed him. "How funny. Shall I give you a thimble like that?" He did so, and it was rather pecky. But directly afterwards, "Ah!" Wendy shrieked. "Ow!" Tinker Bell was pulling her hair, darting "ow!" to and fro in the worst temper ever. And when Peter tried to quiet her, she answered sharply, "You big silly!" Well, certainly Tink was no lady. I hope you enjoyed it. Now I want you to clean your teeth and wash your hands and give yourself the biggest cuddles ever. Cuddle, 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 cuddle. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Night, night.